Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning, and today we've got another combo that one of you guys requested to see, or a choke that you wanted to see requested with a couple different random shells out of my ammo cabinet. So we've got another one of those combinations out here today that should give us some pretty interesting results, because it may work out surprisingly well, or it could also go pretty terribly wrong. But as for the load I got out here today, I brought out some of the Kent Ultimate Turkey Diamond Shot turkey loads. They are a 12 gauge, 3-inch, 1 3/4 ounce payload of lead 4s, moving about 1310 feet per second. Now, as far as the Diamond Shot claim, if anything, it might be a slightly harder compound of lead, but in the grand scheme of things, I really don't think it makes all that much of a difference. These are definitely a budget-oriented shell. I think this box of 10 was like $8.99 or something like that. So for a turkey load, that's pretty cheap. And here's what one of those shells looks like. You probably won't be able to tell on camera, but they are not buffered or anything like that. They do have a wad, and they might have some sort of nickel plating on them, but definitely not a copper plated load. Just your very standard basic budget oriented shell. We've tried these a number of times before with some surprisingly decent results for what they are, but I don't know how they're going to perform through today's choke, and I think that's the big question. So as for that setup, I brought out the Remington 1187. It's got a 28-inch barrel on it, but for the choke, I've got the Carlson's heavyweight TSS choke in here. It's a 640 constriction, so we're definitely down there in the pretty tight category for 12 gauge chokes. 640 with a lead number 4, there's a real high possibility that it's just too much constriction and completely blows our pattern all over the place. But we have the potential to go the other way as well. These are a very cheap, very basic shell, and sometimes they prefer a little bit more constriction to really get them to pattern. So I don't know, we may wind up somewhere in the middle there as well. We're just gonna have to see what happens. But as for today's test, everything is set up the same as usual. The turkey target is at 40 yards, and I've got the chrono so we can get our velocity. So let's get you guys a view of that target and see if these Kent Ultimate Turkey 4s can actually pattern well through this tight of a 640 choke. I don't know what we're gonna get, but let's take our shot and see what happens. Alright, so that shell gave us 1373 through the chrono. Boss claim is 1310. So from a 28-inch barrel, plus a little bit of choke out the end, we did see above that claim. It's been so long since we've tested these, I honestly can't remember if that's pretty usual or not, but I do believe we've seen above our claim a few different times now, if I'm remembering correctly. Either way, 1370s for a lead 4 is moving on out. So is that a little bit too much velocity? I don't know, but let's go check out our pattern and see how they actually performed. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and we definitely see some interesting results. Now, right off the bat, yes, I'm trying a different turkey target because the Birchwood Casey's are getting a little more expensive, and they still kind of suck. These are a much cheaper option, and to be honest with you, they're not anything super impressive either. I was definitely hoping for better out of them. They showed some promise early on, but that target isn't really much different than the Birchwood Casey. So before we actually look in depth at our pattern, I will go ahead and just take the paint marker and touch that up so you guys can see it a little bit better. All right, there we go. That may make things a little bit easier for you guys to see on camera. I don't know why the target price has gone so high and the quality has gone so low here recently with all different brands across the board, but it is what it is. You guys can let me know your thoughts on this target, and I don't know, I may continue to use them, I may not. With how cheap they are, we'll see. Either way, for our pattern, really not too bad for what it is. It's a very cheap, very basic shell through a pretty tight choke in that 640, and that's absolutely capable of getting the job done. We were just a touch off to the left, but we still do have a dead bird. There are multiple right down the spine there that would have gotten the job done. And if we had that centered up just a little bit better, yeah, absolutely. That's 40-yard capable all day long, no doubt about it. Now, I will back up here and pop up a 10-inch circle equivalent right there around our core so you guys can see what it looks like, since we were a touch off to the left, and it really kind of looks pretty decent, all things considered. We might have one little bit of a void right in the middle of that turkey paper, right on the edge there. It's nothing too major necessarily, but it is pretty close to our core area. Just outside of our core, it's a pretty decent little mixture spread of shot around there. Nothing too major to deal with there. Maybe a couple smaller voids in there, mainly over here to the left, but still not bad. We do have a few flyers, a couple up there at the top and around the edges and stuff, but still nothing horrible here. It might not be the most perfectly even spread. We might have a few voids in there to deal with, but it's not anything too detrimental detrimental to the pattern necessarily. Now, do I think it's still too much choke? Yes, I do. We've seen very similar patterns to this through 660 and 665 chokes, so I don't think we gained anything by going down that much in constriction. But honestly, that could have been a whole lot worse, all things considered. That's a combo that I would not be scared to hunt with if it's what I had. It wouldn't be my first choice, but I gotta say, for kind of a cheaper, more oddball choke and shell combination, not that bad overall. And here's the wad out of that shell. Very basic design, very common, nothing too special or out of the ordinary here. There's nothing stuck down in there, no major damage or anything either. That's a pretty tight choke at 640. And with a lead 4, we really don't see much of anything to be concerned about here. It just seems to have done the job about as good as what it could have done. Now, in those shells, you do have some pellets sitting over the top of it, even though it's a pretty sizable wad. So those few pellets over the top could have very well been our flyers or something like that. For a basic design, seems to have done the job decently well, all things considered, for the setup that we push these through. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that pattern right there? Again, I think I gotta say it's pretty decent, all things considered. Is it the best thing out there that we've seen? No. Is it the most perfectly even spread that we've seen from these shells even? Probably not. We do have a couple voids in there, but it's not anything detrimental to the pattern necessarily. And of course, our typical handful of flyers and stuff, nothing out of the ordinary. And I think this combination did okay. It's nothing to write home about, but it's not a horrible option if you just want a cheap shell that you can get off the store shelf at your local Sportsman's Warehouse or whatever. I think that's where I got these shells from. And you've already got one of those Carlson 640s or something as your turkey choke. These would still do perfectly fine out to 40 yards, even if they're not winning any pattern test competitions. So ultimately, it could have been way worse than that. And that just goes to show that sometimes these cheaper shells tend to prefer a little bit more choke constriction than you might initially expect. I don't think we necessarily gained much going down that tight over 660 or something, but not horrible for results still. But leave all your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Kent Ultimate turkey shells? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? Is that a pattern or a combo that you would ever hunt with? Or would you still prefer it to be a little bit more condensed down or even than that? And what other shells or choke combos do you want to see with either of those Ultimate Turkey 4s or that Carlson 640? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.